Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Robuilt. Today we're going to be touring the Little Dip. Hey, you messed up my shot. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Robuilt. Today we're going to be looking at the Little Dipper, a 300 square foot tiny home in Joshua Tree, California. Cut to the intro thing. Welcome to my tiny and unique space showcase where I'm going to be traveling around the country starting in Southern California and visiting the coolest spots that Airbnb has to offer. Before we get into today's video, we're going to hear a quick word from our sponsors, Squarespace. Squarespace is an intuitive all-in-one platform for creating the most awesome website. No, I'm just kidding, I'm not sponsored by Squarespace. But Squarespace, if you're listening, I am looking for sponsors. And with that, we're going to pick this right back up tomorrow morning, which for you will be 2 seconds from now. Told you. Like I said, this place is called the Little Dipper. It's a 300 square foot tiny home on wheels in Joshua Tree, California, and it's completely off the grid. It's actually right next to another super awesome Airbnb called Moon Camp, owned by the same people. If you're interested in staying here, I'm gonna leave a link in the description down below. Do me a really big favor, when you're checking out these spaces, go ahead and hit the heart button in the top right corner of the listing. It helps the awesome owners of these properties show up in the Airbnb algorithm, which we all know is important, and it also saves it as a future trip for you in case you ever want to visit. You can also follow the Little Dipper on Instagram. If you want to follow me, you can follow me at Robuilt. And if you want $35 off of your first Airbnb stay, I'll leave another link in the description down below that'll give you that credit as soon as you sign up. We're going to do a quick exterior rundown and then we're going to head inside, but be sure to stick around until the very end where I do a financial deep dive on this property, talking about how much it could cost you to get into a similar type of property and how much it could make you in passive income. Right off the bat, one of my favorite things about this tiny house is the approach that they took to landscaping. The entire front yard is made up of turf, then they actually outline that turf with a big gravel path, which I think is a nice touch. And one of the things I really appreciate is how much attention to detail they've put into placing rocks all around the property. Definitely fits the desert vibe. And I'm a really big sucker for this really big Dwayne Johnson right here. Look how huge this thing is, man. What's up, Dwayne? If you're getting cabin fever by hanging out in a 300 square foot tiny house and you're in here with 3 or 4 people, you got plenty of outdoor space. They've got outdoor seating, they've got a fire pit, they've got 2 hammocks, and then they've also got a little patio table. So really you have everything you could possibly need for a weekend getaway with your friends. All right, we're gonna head inside, but before we do, I just wanted to point out the stairs. Hey, how's it going? You're in my shot. Hi. Wanted just to point out the stairs. They have little stairs here that they custom built for this tiny house. Tiny house? Stairs that lead you up to the tiny house too, so you don't have to step onto the tiny house. Really nice touch here. All in all, so far, this tiny house has it all. So why don't we go inside and check out the inside? And before we do, hit that like button and hit subscribe. Would really appreciate it because it does help me out with the YouTube algorithm. All right, let's go. All right, we're in the kitchen here and I am seriously really impressed at how spacious it is. Usually in tiny houses, you're not able to extend your arms without hitting a couple of things, and it usually feels super crammed. But I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think that this is basically a full-size kitchen in a smaller home. Now, granted, it is a tiny house, so there are a few sacrifices that you're gonna make. But overall, I would say that you have all of the amenities that you would have in a typical house. I mean, we have open shelvings. Typically, you might have open cabinets right here, but I think the open shelving motif kind of works because they have this exposed piping right here. And that exposed piping is something that they carry through the entire house. I think that the contrast between rustic and industrial really works inside of this tiny house. In your open shelves, you got all the glassware you're gonna need, mugs, wine glasses if you want a party. You got drinking glasses, and then here we've got about 12-ish plates. On this side, we still have our open shelves here. We have additional glassware if we want to use it. And they also have their house rules printed here and framed up, which I actually think is super important both as a guest and a host. Many times as a host, we'll send out the house rules in advance on Airbnb, but often guests don't actually ever check those messages. So they'll message you asking you questions that you've already answered. So if you have them nice and printed here, this kind of addresses a lot of the questions that people are going to be asking. They've got little, oh, shit. Ooh, got scared because my mic cord touched my leg. One thing that I actually think is really cool about this is that they have this tiny, They have this tiny little sink. It's not a sink, it's a stove. They have a tiny little stove here. It's a 24-inch stove. In building tiny houses, I have tried to find 24-inch stoves, but they're really difficult to come across, and usually they come in white, but this is a stainless steel stove, and I think it's like super nice, and it actually is an oven too. Now, given that this tiny house is off the grid, every single aspect of the appliances and the bathroom, that all runs on solar power, propane, water tank, so it's actually kind of cool to see that this is a fully functional house, and it's off the grid, and it's especially nice that they have a fully functioning AC, and it's a mini split too. Speaking as someone who owns an off-the-grid experience, a lot of the times we are messaging guests and we're asking them to be mindful and to conserve resources. And so a lot of the times we have enough power for people to charge their phones and small little gadgets like that, but we always ask them not to use things like hair dryers or anything that's gonna suck up too much energy. The hosts in this tiny house, they do ask that. They ask that you stay mindful of the environment and of the resources that you use, but they actually don't really restrict the AC use. I mean, they say, do not put the AC below 68, do not leave it running at all times, but use it. And I think that I think that's a really big luxury that a lot of off-the-grid experiences don't have. It's 95 degrees outside. I mean, just walking from the car to inside the house, we were already drenched in sweat. I mean, it's a dry heat in Joshua Tree, but nonetheless, 95 degrees is kind of hot. Not as hot as 98 degrees though. All right, let me show you my favorite part of the kitchen. We've got a full-size sink. I mean, I'm always such a sucker for sinks, and this is something that I talked about in my Conejo video. If you wanna watch that video, I'm gonna leave a link up here so that you can watch it after this video. But I'm always such a sucker for, you know, really big sinks, just in general, whatever the house size is, but whenever it's in a tiny house, it's even more cool because I just think that that's one of the luxuries that you don't really wanna sacrifice in a tiny house. I mean, tiny house living is about making sacrifices in small spaces. I mean, that's kind of a given, and you have to choose what amenities you want to splurge on and where you want to sacrifice. And so for me, the kitchen is always so important. I really like this door too. It's a sliding door, not quite a pocket door, but slides open and close. This bathroom is super dreamy as well. The style from the entire house is carried through into the bathroom. Makes sense. You can see that they've carried the shiplap throughout here as well. And not just that, but all the same wood color trim around all the windows. And honestly, the best part about this bathroom is the view that you get outside. I mean, you are overlooking all of Joshua Tree. From the full-size shower with subway tile to the custom vanity to a full-size toilet, which is very important. And they even have a tankless water heater in here so that you can take hot showers on here. Now, of course, you want to be mindful of the resources, but you can still take a hot shower after hiking Joshua Tree for a day. And that's something that you're not necessarily gonna get in any other tiny home that's off the grid. Here's something that I think really embraces the tiny house living mentality, and it's the stairs. Now, the stairs, not only are they cool, I mean, they look super nice, they're very well crafted, they are very sturdy. But one thing that you'll find about the tiny living movement is how important storage is. And so not only do these stairs get you to the upstairs loft up here, but they also serve as complete storage down here as well. We've already used it ourselves. We put all of our backpacks and our luggage down here, but we have a big cubby, medium cubby, small cubby, and then of course we have shelves under here too, and our luggage is actually down here right now. I don't know.
Well, you already said this part. Why are you saying it?
Because I didn't like the way I said it the first time.
The first 3 times?
The first 7 times. Yeah. One really cool thing about the loft that I really like is that they have a queen size bed. Even in my tiny house, which is, you know, feels much bigger, it's 300 square feet as well. It feels like a more traditional house. I went with the full size bed just because I wanted it to feel more spacious in there. But now after experiencing this loft, it makes me feel like I should have gone with the queen. And there are a lot of different nice touches up there that I really like. They have lights on the side of the bed. They have plugs on every side of the bed too so that you can charge your phone. And then the windows, as I've said multiple times, you can get a view of the entire Joshua Tree landscape no matter what window you look at in this house, but it's even cooler when you're on the 2nd floor. This tiny house is 300 square feet, and my baby is making a lot of noise. This tiny house is 300 square feet, which I know sounds small, but once you actually walk the entire house, you're gonna feel like you're in a much bigger place. I mean, I think most New Yorkers would kill for a space like this, and it's all because of the design. It's one big open box, and so I feel like that really opens up the space. The stairs don't really take up that much space in the actual living room itself. And then the loft hangs over the living room, and it's honestly, it's not that short. You're not gonna hit your head in here. Well, I'm 5'8". I guess if you're 6 foot, you might have to crouch a little bit. But for the most part, this is a fully functional living room. I mean, we have a couch, we have a full-size couch here, and this folds out into a bed itself. We have a coffee table. We have a mounted TV up here. Literally everything about this tiny house feels like you're inside of one of those IKEA showrooms where they show you how to fully maximize a 300 square foot studio apartment. That's what this feels like. At 300 square feet, I am so blown away at how immaculate it is in here, because this place is booked 100%. This place is spotless, there's no dust at all, and the attention to detail from corner to corner is something that I think I've never really seen before. Now we're gonna get into my favorite part of this whole video, which is the tiny house financials. We're gonna be talking about how much money it costs to get into this tiny house and how much money you could make with it on Airbnb. Now keep in mind that everything I'm gonna be talking about are general numbers, and this is just based on my experience and research and with my previous conversations with the owners. Now when I spoke to the owners, they said that this house roughly cost $60,000 to construct, which I know a lot of people out there were freaking out with my $165,000 tiny house, and they were like, oh, it's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. Well, I can see how this house got to $60,000 pretty easily. I mean, a trailer just to hold a house this massive, I mean, this house is, probably 10,000 pounds. Those trailers aren't really that cheap. So I could see that they probably spent anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 on the trailer alone. But then when you consider every single aspect of this tiny house, from the actual solar to the tankless water heater to the plumbing to the electrical to every single detail on the inside, yeah, they definitely went every bit of $60,000. I mean, it makes complete sense to me because this house is a luxury tiny house and there's no other way around it. Just looking at the listing on Airbnb, which again, I'll link down in the description below, don't forget to heart, we'll see that this tiny house runs for about $200 a night, which honestly does run a little high for the area because there are actually houses, bigger houses that you can get for less than $200 a night. But there's one really big difference between those houses and this house. And those houses are usually kind of boring stick-built houses. This house is an awesome tiny house. And when you're signing up for this house, you're signing up for the gimmick, the theme, the movement of living tiny for a weekend or a day, right? For your getaway. And so, I'm not just saying that based on my opinion that it's worth $200 a night. I'm saying that based on looking at the calendar, it's booked 100%. I even asked the owners for myself, and they did confirm that this place basically runs at 100% occupancy, which good for them. I get it. They totally deserve it for the work that went into this tiny house. So knowing that a tiny house is $60,000 and it's gonna pull in about $200 per night at 100% occupancy, you can already start to see how this investment makes sense. Now you can't always guarantee that you're gonna be 100% occupied as an Airbnb host. I tend to be, but not every host is. So we're gonna just run numbers based on being booked 25 out of 30 nights a month, which I think is super achievable. If you have this place and you're booking it 25 nights a month at $200 a night, then that comes out to $5,000 a month. Not bad, right? Now you multiply that $5,000 by 12 months, and you can already see that in 1 year, you can grow $60,000 on a property like this, which is seriously insane. There aren't really a lot of investments where you spend $60,000 and you get $60,000 back a year later. I mean, it's pretty rare. I'm sure that they exist. If you guys know of any that aren't tiny houses, let me know, because I'm always down to invest in other ways. Now let's just say that I'm really wrong, and I know that I'm not, but that you're only able to book 15 nights a month out of 30 nights. That still comes out to $3,000 a month. $3,000 times 12 months, $36,000. Times 2 years, $72,000. So even in a not so great scenario, you can still make $72,000 on the property like this over 2 years, which is still a really, really good deal. Let's just say you're in an area where you can't book $200 a night. Let's say you book $150 a night. $150 a night at 25 nights a month is still $3,750, which comes out to $45,000 a year when you multiply that $3,750 times 12 months. So $45,000 a year is kind of the low end that I think you could reasonably expect on something like this, but the high end is $60,000. So if you're thinking about building a tiny house as an investment, do your research, find a good area. I mean, Joshua Tree is obviously a great one, but there are so many places like Joshua Tree that you can build. You can do anywhere in a national park, Zion, Yosemite, Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, Joshua Tree, anywhere where there's gonna be foot traffic going to a national park. People are wanting to embrace that tiny house kind of mentality. So I always think that an investment like this is always gonna pan out in your favor. And that's just a really quick rundown on the tiny house financials of this specific place. I know that you can achieve similar results for yourself. It's just gonna take a little bit of hard work in sorting out the logistics, but once you do, it is passive income that you can be making on the side. If you're interested in buying a tiny house for yourself so that you can make passive income on Airbnb, but you don't really know where to start, I actually do tiny house and Airbnb consulting now, so you can shoot me an email down below and we can kind of work out an action plan for yourself. I can answer any questions that you might have. But for now, that's the end of this tour, and I've got more coming. I'm really excited about them. I'm really excited about the opportunities that I'm gonna be exploring here in August, so keep an eye out for my upcoming videos. And until then, I'll catch you on the next episode of Robuilt.